Are you ready to take your business to the next level and make the money you want so that you can create the impact you desire? Then you're in the right place. It's possible to run a successful business built around your life. Get ready for a little bit of tough love and a whole lot of strategy to grow your business without sacrificing your sanity. If you're ready to get out of your own way and step into the role of CEO, then let's go. I'm Amy Traw, and this is the Motivated CEO Podcast. Can we talk about income-based marketing? Because it is everywhere, and the sea of sameness, the things and the claims we are hearing are driving me nuts, completely driving me nuts. And today on the podcast, I am joined by Lindsay Smith, one of my business besties. She is a copywriter and content strategist for small business owners. And we have these discussions in the DMs all the time. And I just really appreciate how you're like, we get it. We're on the same level. And we realize that, okay, in order to stand out, we can't be doing what everyone else is doing. And I think a lot of people are getting sick and tired of this. I know that I am. How about you? What do you think?
Yeah, same. And I know, you and I chit chat about this all the time. We get super fired up. And it was so interesting that you shared that FTC article.
Yeah.
Can you let's talk about that. So tell us what was in there and what's happening in the US.
There's a lot of things. Like, I'm based here in the United States, you're in Canada. So I'm not sure if there's like a similar regulating body there. I'm sure there's something. But here in the United States, there's this governing body, the FTC, and they're really cracking down on these arduous claims that are out there, these income-based marketing claims saying, okay, if you're sharing testimonials, if you're sharing out results, you need to back it up with receipts. Because if someone reports you and reports that you're doing deceptive marketing, deceptive tactics, sharing wins that aren't real or realistic, you can get in a boatload of trouble. And there's been several major cases with big companies, but just because you're a small business owner doesn't mean this doesn't apply to you, because it's very easy to go on their website and report someone. So as a business owner, it's so important that we are staying ahead of these regulation changes, because these changes just went into effect in August. So that's why I really firmly believe that as a business owner, one of the first people you need to hire out is a lawyer, because it's always changing. I'm not a lawyer. I can't keep up with it. That's why you need someone on your side that can and can help you decipher it. And that's what this article, it's over on LinkedIn, really dove into, is breaking it down into layman's terms as to what it means for us as entrepreneurs in the online space, because there is a lot of deceptive marketing going on that really gives the industry then a bad name. How about in Canada? What are you seeing?
Sorry. We have something like that. I forget what it's called, but yeah, there is something that it's like, yeah, I don't know what it's called. And here's something that I think, right? This income-based marketing thing, like if you look back like 2 years, maybe even 3 years, like a lot of people were using this because it was working. And I think it attracts a certain kind of person. And I have been sucked into it as well. Like, oh my God, obviously, if this person's making this much money, they really know what they're talking about. And so I think it attracts a certain kind of person. And the other thing is the people who were using it 2, 3 years ago, it's kind of like, well, now what? Because they've been doing this whole time. And now it's kind of like, well, what else are you going to talk about? Because that's all you've been talking about for 2, 3 years, right? So it's kind of, and here's the other thing too. I didn't even realize this. I learned this on Threads. One, you can completely fib about how much you're making. There's like all kinds of like random websites that will mimic like your Stripe account or whatever, that you can just make up whatever you want. And I think especially in the time of MMR, right, where it's like this weird industry that's like on one hand, you see somebody being like, oh my God, I'm not making any money. This sucks. And then their next post is like, wow, 20 grand in 20 minutes. And you're like, what? Okay, that's sketchy. So, and I talk about this a lot too with my clients, like the way people are scrolling. If you're like whatever it is in your email inbox, in your social content, whatever it is, like the way people are scrolling, like, and whoever's listening, like I want you to think about the way you're scrolling and what like pops out at you. What pops out at you in your email inbox? What pops out at you on your social feeds? And it's not that anymore. And it's not the like 6 tips to blah, 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 right? And I think there's two things there. There's the income-based marketing stuff, which I feel like smarty pantses are like over and they can see right through it, right? Like once you know it, you can't unknow it and you just see it and you're like, oh, that's gross. And then on the other side, I think, we've always been told like, oh, you have to do educational content, blah, 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 right? And so there's always these 5 tips to but that stuff is getting tiresome. And when you see that stuff in your social feeds or you see that stuff in your inbox, you're just like, wah, wah.
Right.
Like I think people want to be like entertained. Like I think we're shifting to like a different type of like content formula.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And it's
I
making
have a
so
lot to
many of
say.
us, yeah, I love it. But it's causing so many of us to get in our heads and then to overthink all of it. But the tip that you shared about when you're scrolling, when you're going through your inbox, like just noting what draws you in. I mean, that right there is something I learned from you a while ago. And that is really a great piece of advice because when you think about it, you're having this different perspective. You're viewing it from a different angle. And it's like, well, what about this is standing out to me? Because we are all consumers on some level and we're forgetting that. And then we get in our heads and we think, "Oh, okay, I need to do this type of content this way because everybody else is telling me I need to do this." And then we get in our heads and we get into analysis paralysis. And it's just crazy and maddening to me. Like how many entrepreneurs you see are closing up shop because they're like, well, I just don't know. And these are amazing business owners. But as you said, it's because so many people then, got sucked into this. You need to share all these financial wins, this, that, and the other. And the fact that those platforms existed to create those fake screenshots is just downright wrong. And I think that's part of the reason that these governing bodies are finally like, yeah, this isn't okay because it's not. Like, how can you truly be ethical? How can you really have a business where you're maintaining that integrity when you're doing something like that? You're creating this false hope, these false promises, and it's really manipulative and just downright cringy.
It's super cringy, and I agree. And I think it's like, and I think there was a time where it was like that was expected,
Yeah.
right? Like the very first coach I worked with, she's no longer a coach because she just was like, she just got yucked out about it. And I remember her talking to me about, you know, she would put out some financial wins, like I made 30 grand this month or whatever. And I remember, because I knew her as a friend, I was like, that's amazing. But looking back, she was like, that is yucky. She's like, I did that because it was like expected. Like
Mm-hmm.
she's like, that's not my typical month, but it was expected that that's the kind of thing that I shared. Right. So I think there's, and it again, right? Like if you're new or whatever, you're just kind of like, am I supposed to be doing this? Like, and like you said, we get into our head and we're like, is this what everybody else is doing? And the word integrity, I feel like, like when you go back to your business values and stuff, right? Like mine is authenticity, transparency. I have a third one. I forget what it is right now, but like those are important to me. And I think, early on when I sort of switched from only doing copywriting to, in addition, taking on content clients and teaching people how to create content, like in the early days, I was kind of like, is this how I'm supposed to talk to people? Right? Because you don't really know. And I think unless we have these conversations, I think it just keeps going. And the other thing is, right, like the income claims, you have no idea what their overhead is. You have no idea how much they spent on ads. You have no idea what they're spending on, you know, God knows what. And there's this other thing that's expected is like, oh, well, I spent 50 grand on this such and such program. So this means I am charging you X amount of dollars. I don't give a shit what program you have invested in and how much it costs. Zero shits. I don't, that has no bearing on me working with you.
Yeah, same. Oh my gosh, I could not agree more. So much of this is taken out of context. And you're right, we don't know what the overhead is. We don't know what the profit margin is. We're not getting the whole story. And I think that the longer this goes on, we kind of saw like the boom and now we're seeing the bust where people are sick and tired of it. They're sick and tired of feeling like crap every single time that they see someone sharing, I made the 30K effortlessly and easily while sitting on the beach drinking a margarita. It's like, okay, well, what went into that? And it drives me crazy. And you're right too about, oh, I invested this much money. Well, do you see everyone out there with a doctorate just, boasting that every single day? I have a doctorate from Cornell, da 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 da. Okay, great. That's wonderful. Like you invested a boatload of money into that, but does that make you any more qualified? No, what makes us qualified is our experience in the field and the results that our clients are getting beyond the monetary results. Because a lot of times I don't share my clients' monetary results because I didn't put in the work. They did the work. That is their win. That is for them to share. I am here on the back end to help you leverage the data to drive your decisions, to help you strategically grow your business in a way that feels good for you. And when we're living in such a noisy world, taking the time to really quiet that noise and come back to what do I want as a business owner is so, so crucial because what we're doing is we're copying what everybody else is doing. It's this copy paste society and we're blending in with the noise. And you're right about the educational content. We get these 5 tips and tricks and these things. But what's happening is now people are going to tools like ChatGPT and just copying and pasting using all the same words. And it's just like, even that's getting maddening. When you're scrolling through, you can kind of tell, oh, that's a ChatGPT post because they sound the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, I agree. And I think, I used to be very anti ChatGPT, and then I was like, okay, let's just like make friends with it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an awesome tool. I think, however, and I've seen some big names have very questionable emails and social captions, but I'm like, that something's askew here. And I think what's missing there, sure, I know you and I have talked about this. Yes, you can use ChatGPT as like a rough draft. However, if your brand voice is missing from that, then there's no point, right? Also, it's a robot. And it's like asking your Roomba to write copy for you. Like it's the same thing, right? Like I know it's like a smart robot and whatever, and there's all these like cool things you can do. Sure, it's a tool. It's not going to replace your own voice. It's not going to replace the way you communicate. Yeah, and it's so funny. Like I did a training ages ago with some sort of chat GPT guy, and he basically told me like, yeah, they're coming for your job. It's like, what?
No.
And I forget what he did, but he was just like, yeah, we've let go of 2 copywriters because we write all our emails with ChatGPT. And I was like, I don't, that's not cool. Like
Yeah.
and so, yes, I understand It's an awesome tool. I don't think it can't replace your brain. It can't replace the inspiration. And when you think about creating content, um, the thing that you're like the kind of content where you're like trying to fit it into a box and a formula and whatever, and it takes you like 3 hours. That's always the content that's like wah wah versus the stuff that you're like, oh, that's a fun idea. I'm gonna throw that out there. And then all of a sudden it works and people are like, oh, like, and here's the thing. People always talk about it like engagement, engagement, engagement. Yes, engagement on Instagram is down, blah, 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 whatever. The biggest compliment you can get on your content is people feeling seen and your ideal people being like, oh my God, you're talking to me. Oh my God, you're in my head. Oh yes, right? Like you want that's the kind of reactions you want. Nobody like, and I know people keep talking about this, like, oh my God, my views are down. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, yes, again, back to data. Sure, checking your views and whatever once a month or whatever on Instagram, great. Figure out what's working, figure out what your people absorbing. But otherwise, don't worry about it. Don't worry about the numbers on Instagram. Nobody is, it's a blessing and a curse that like nobody's watching that closely, but also nobody is watching that closely. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, these are two amazing tools when we leverage them appropriately in our business. But our content strategy shouldn't just be using ChatGPT. It shouldn't just be posting on social media. And I think that's what so many people forget. That content is so much more than that. It's not just one thing. It's not just social media. And it's so funny what you said because it's absolutely true about, the content that just kind of pops into our head and we do on a whim. That's always the stuff that resonates with people. The things that we're just in real time, in the heat of the moment, sharing something passionately. That's what people resonate with because it humanizes our brand. Because at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
people buy from people. And if you
Mm-hmm.
make someone feel understood, seen, heard, valued, guess what? They're going to be attracted to you. But I think it's scary as business owners because we don't want to offend someone. We don't want to step on toes. But in actuality, we kind of need to be polarizing in order to attract the people that resonate with us and repel those that don't. And I think it really comes down to having the self-awareness as to what you stand and going back to what are your brand values.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's, yeah, and you're right. Like it is kind of scary to like disrupt the calm seas or whatever. And it doesn't mean like you have to like poop all over one group and lift
Right.
up another group, right? Like it doesn't have to be like that, but you do have to have some sort of stance. You do sort of have to disrupt the some of the common ideas, right? How you do that is up to you and your comfort level. Like and I say this all the time, right? Like I'm not putting a picture of myself in a bikini is not, that has nothing to do with my ideal client. Like, sure, that's super vulnerable and like will disrupt my feed, but that has nothing to do with my ideal client, right? I'll probably get a bunch of stupid bots following me or something.
Oh gosh,
But
this is the worst.
oh my God, I get them every day. Do you
I
get
do
like the
too.
naked ladies following
I
you all the
do.
time?
I do. Like the
Oh,
picture of their like rear
yes,
end, and I'm like,
yes.
let's just remove you. And that's something else I do. I go through and take people off that are following me all of the time because I know obviously, yeah, it's cool to have more followers, but are you ever going to be interested in what I'm doing? No. So get out of my world.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing people don't talk about, right? Qualified leads. Like and I think we still live in a time where it's like you want a massive email list and you want a massive social following. And I think there's so many people out there who are like, grow your following, grow your following. Oh my God, I grew 10,000 followers in 6 months. And okay, so what? What happened next? What happened next? And so I know we still live in a time where it's like you're checking the number of followers, right? Um, just this past weekend, I was at this business retreat. My friend Maud, she's called the retro quilter. So she's super into retro and she makes a ton of quilts. She has like 40,000 Instagram followers. So, it does convert for her. But at the same time, she was also saying, like, I feel kind of like there was a time where like the content ideas just came and came and came. And she's like, now I feel this like obligation to show up for this community. So the number of followers, right? It's not necessarily the answer. And I know there's a lot of content people who teach that. And it's kind of like, okay, but then what?
Mm-hmm.
Just so you can say, look how many followers I have. And I've seen it too. Like some of the dum-dums are like, well, who are you to say blah 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 blah? You only have 2,000 followers, and this guy's got 100,000. So obviously, what he's saying is more relevant.
Right. Exactly.
Malarkey.
And right. And then we're trying to like all go viral and do these trends and do this dancing. Like, no, I draw the line there. I will not do trends. I will not dance. I will not put filters on. Like, this is me. What you see is what you get. And it's easy to get sucked into this shiny object that is more followers, a
Mhm.
bigger list, this, that, and the other. But it all comes back to those qualified leads, the
Mhm.
quality of the people that are in your world. Are they your ideal client? And, something else we talked about too was, as business owners, we're starting to treat our businesses and trying to grow them like the influencers do, using these
Mhm.
tactics because we're on this quest for more. But if we're on this quest for more and it's not converting, what's the point? What are you doing with it? Is it just a bunch of bots in bikinis that are, following your account? It's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, and I think like you remember the days when it was like you could buy followers
Oh
or
yeah.
the follow pods or whatever
Hmm.
nonsense, right? And I did one once and I was like, this is exhausting.
Yeah.
And you can see, right? Like you can see sometimes, oh boy, something's pissing off the dog, probably a leaf flew by
Love
or
it.
something. But like you can see sometimes people's comments are like, great job, love this. Oh, super for you. And I'm like, it's so
Right.
clear that it's just a bunch of fake
Right.
old people.
Exactly. It's like if you're
And
going to
and
bother taking the time to engage, make it worthwhile.
mhm. um can you hear the dog barking?
I hear like a
Okay, that's her.
That's okay. Just
It's real life over here, folks. I got a
exactly.
I got a kid on the couch and a dog who barks at anything that makes her upset.
Well, that's real life. I mean, that's
It's
just
real
it.
life.
And we're juggling all of the things and running businesses. That is the life of a business owner.
I know it totally is. And I think and here's the other thing that happens with content, right? Like and I know you mentioned like shiny object syndrome. And so much of business is like the nerdy, unglamorous things. And I think I have definitely been sucked into shiny object, and I know you have too.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's just like the human condition. But so much of it is just looking at what's working and continuing to do that. And I talk about this a lot with my clients, and I'm like, a lot of my clients are like, well, my content's not converting. My content's not converting. Instagram's not converting. I'm like, okay, maybe Instagram is not. And when I say content, people immediately think Instagram. They think social media immediately and they think Instagram immediately. That's fine. Whatever. Content is actually much bigger than that, right? Like your website, that's your content. This is content right here. It's much bigger than that. It's how you represent your brand out in the world. Like that is content. So funny. This business retreat I was at this weekend, I felt like anytime anybody was talking, I was like, that's content. That's content. I felt like I was just following people around. And when they were getting really fired up about stuff, I was like, that's content. Just so I was like, I feel like I need to just be like, follow everybody around with like a camera and be like, that was content. That's content. um, where was I going with this? I forget what I was
Just
saying.
how building a business, it's not sexy. It's not about
No,
those
it's not
shiny
sexy.
objects. It's
Hmm.
digging in and doing the basics over and over and over, day in and day out, even when you don't feel like it. You have to
Hmm.
stay accountable to yourself, stay disciplined to
Hmm.
yourself. Because, sure, especially when you're working from home, it's easy to be like, I just don't feel like it today. We all
Just
have
gonna have a
those
little lie
days.
down. Hmm.
Exactly, exactly. But if we're doing that day after day after day after day, and then we wonder, okay, well, why isn't my content converting? Well, you're doing the same thing and expecting different results. It's the definition of
Hmm.
insanity.
Yeah. Yeah. And if it's like, you know, like I'm a big proponent of long form content, like a podcast, a blog, YouTube videos, all of like the old school stuff that everybody forgot about. Um, so I think, your hardcores, like I always talk about your hardcore fans, and they are the ones who are going to binge your content. They're going to like start to creep you. And I think the buyer process has lengthened. And I think maybe 5, 6 years ago, it was like, post a random thing on Instagram, buy now, and somebody would buy, right? Things have shifted and things are going to continue to shift, but we are not in that time anymore. I think people are like they've invested in all this stuff and they're like, why would I invest in you? Right? Like I think people are getting more skeptical. There's like more online business owners than ever before. And it's kind of like, why you and why now? So I think more than ever, our messaging has to be so super clear, and you have to figure out like what makes you different, your USP, like more than ever, and like dial into it big time. And so much of marketing is just repeating yourself. People forget that. You're just repeating yourself from different angles, different ideas. And I think people get like, they're like, oh my God, I have to think of like 57 content ideas for the next month. No, you don't. Just say this, keep saying the same thing. Because what is it? 5 to 7 touch points or something before somebody makes a purchase. And I think it's probably like 10 now, I would say.
Yeah.
So you're talking to those hardcore fans who want to absorb your stuff all the time. Those are the people. And this is the other thing. I have so many tangents.
I love it.
Like, think about like a client you've had, or a client that would be your super ideal client, and write all your content to that one person. One person. Like instead of being like, oh my God, what do I say to the masses? Think about, Andrea, think about Nancy, think about Rebecca, and like what do they need? What are their struggles and what do they need? And just write your content to that person. Create your content for that one person, and then it'll take all the overwhelm away.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a great piece of advice because we're trying to please everyone. It goes kind of back to the people pleasing thing. We want
Oh,
to be
yes.
accepted by everyone and
The
we
belonging.
forget,
Hmm.
right? Exactly. And we're looking for that instant gratification. We want to see that we're liked with all those likes, comments,
Hmm.
shares, all of the engagement on social media. But you're right. Getting back to what you called the old school tactics are so valuable. Really diving in and talking to people that are already opted into our world, writing
Hmm.
nurture emails, humanizing our brand, telling stories, really taking the time, like you said, to clarify the messaging because, yes, the market has shifted in 2024. I mean, even in the past 6 months, we've seen such a shift, and it all goes back to a lot of it being the income-based marketing tactics. So many people have gotten burnt in the online space with these big dreams, these big aspirations. Oh, when you're done with my program, you're going to make 100K on your next launch. It's like, it's really shifted. The whole entire market has shifted. And yeah, you have to repeat yourself over and over and over and over and over because the world is noisy. I
Yeah.
heard once, like, someone asked me, like, hey, can you recall my last 5 posts? And I was like, no. They're like, can you recall your last 5 posts? I couldn't. Like, I don't even know what my last 5 posts were. I have a little idea because I kind of stick with a general structure. I couldn't tell you any specifics though. And that is key. It's doing the same thing over and over and over, but then looking at the data, assessing what is working, what is not. And that is the missing piece that allows us to shift and adapt and tweak and refine our messaging so that we can then grow our sales because it's not rocket science. It's double downing on what is working and then releasing and moving away from what's not. Because we're always evolving, we're always growing, and our messaging should always be being refined more and more and more to speak to that one person. You're so right. You're so right.
I know. Why don't we just like be in charge of the whole world? We're
I
really
know we
smart.
should. We should. I love it.
And that's what I've learned from you is like looking at the data and like, the past sort of 6, 7, 8 months, I've really nerded out on the stuff you talk about. I'm like, huh, this is, I was winging it for the first little while, which
We
I
all
think
do at
works for
first.
which works for a while until it stops working. And
Right.
that's definitely something I've learned from you is like nerding out on numbers and data. And, I still don't know how to work spreadsheets, but
It's
I'm
okay.
getting there.
Well, and the thing is, you don't have to. Everybody gets so sucked into the whole numbers thing. They're like, but I'm not a numbers person. You don't have to be. Just start to get curious. See, where are people coming in from? What emails are actually getting opened? What are people replying back to me in those emails? There's some that I send out that I actually get replies back, and I love that. And that's valuable information for me because I can go, ooh, what about this did people like? How can I duplicate and do more of that? That's what makes it so
Yeah,
much easier. And that
I
gets me out
know.
of my head
I
and into
agree.
action, you know?
Yeah. And I think, and for we're creative people, the entrepreneurial people are
Yeah,
creative
you have
people.
to be.
And I think it's so easy for us to just be like, oh, we have new ideas all the time, right? Like we essentially invented something from nothing. Like there was Amy Traw, like you had a different business before, and then you were like, okay, I'm gonna make up this new thing. So you just was like pulled it out of a hat, basically,
Mm-hmm.
right? Same. And so I think we have this like, oh, I'm just gonna create this new thing. I'm gonna create this other new thing. And I think the more you can simplify, the better. Like
Yeah,
depending on if you are a product-based business or a service-based business, like I think having two offers, three offers, I don't know, 20 SKUs, whatever it is, like just simplify it because it makes your life so much easier. And then you just get better and better at the things that you do offer. And so I think there was a time where it was constantly like, oh, this new thing and this other new thing and blah, 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 blah. And like you said, just look at the data and see what's working. And I think I was in the middle of a launch last week when we had to spend a few days at the hospital because my son had to have his appendix out. So all of a sudden my launch was like interrupted. So I was kind of like, okay, well, what do I do next? Right? Like some things can be, my launch was like super strategic up until that point. And then all of a sudden 5 days of like sleeping in most terrible bed to cot things. I know everybody, if you're a parent, even if you're not a parent, I know you know. And then I was kind of like, well, now what? So, and I think that's the thing that we forget sometimes. Like our brand is going to shift and change as we grow and shift and change. You can have the best plans for a launch or a new product or whatever, and it can all go to poop. And you have to be willing to be like, okay, like you say, get curious. And I think curiosity is like the one of the most underrated business skills. Just be like, ask questions. Be like, okay, well, what do I do now? What's
right.
going to work? What doesn't work? And so much of marketing is just experimentation, right? And doing the best we can with the research we have and the data that we have, and trying it. And I think if you are trying and experimenting and asking questions, like I feel like you're probably the top 5%,
Yeah.
right? Because we're still here. It's super easy. It'd be easier for me to be like, F this noise and go work at the Starbucks across the street. For sure. I'd probably be miserable and they'd probably fire me because I'd have a horrible attitude. Be like, don't you know who I am? But I think, we've chosen this path. And I say this all the time, like, I'm pretty sure I'm unemployable. One, because even if I wanted to get back into advertising, I don't have a portfolio. Two, I would have such an attitude and be like, how dare you tell me what to do? This is beneath me. Like, so, like, I think we have no choice but to just keep going.
Right, exactly. We let that ego get in our way, but
Hmm.
you've got to have that grit. You've got to have the ability to take that step back and get curious. And if things aren't trending the way you want, that's okay. That's an opportunity to get curious and go, well, how can I make this work? Because there's so much proof out there that it can work. So get back
Hmm.
to the basics. And like Lindsay said, simplify in order to amplify. It comes down to that. This doesn't have to be complicated. Content doesn't have to be complicated. You do not have to fall into the sea of sameness, all the income-based marketing, all of the things. I love our conversations, Lindsay. Thank you so much for taking time to just always be my sounding board. I appreciate
Oh, I
you
love
so
it.
much. Oh
Same,
gosh.
same.
You need a business bestie in your life. If you
I
don't
know
have
it's
one,
true.
like seriously, like get out there and just start talking to people because that's how we met. We just met like
I know.
randomly and just started talking in
Chit
the
chat.
DMs. And yeah, now we chit chat
Hmm.
every day. So
I know.
thank you so much for being here. If you guys want more of Lindsay and to get into her world, we are going to link up. Her coffee chat connection call is hosted most Tuesdays. So information on that is in the show notes. Get into her world. She is so super smart with content and really has such a simple way of demystifying the whole process and helping
The
you
anti-formula
refine.
formula.
Yes, I love it. I love it because it has changed my business. So, Lindsay, I appreciate you. And until
I
next
appreciate you.
time, aw, thank you. And until next time, cheers to making the money you want so you can create the impact you desire. Are you loving what you're hearing? Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode.